Today we'll do an example code on creating your own exception. So first we'll start by creating two classes. So I created a new class, main.java, and out of range exception.java. So the throwable class is the parent of both the error class and the exception class. A lot of exceptions are derived from the exception class, and these classes also have many subclasses. We define our own exception by deriving a new class from exception or one of its descendants. So we'll start in the out of range exception class. So we'll just type public class out of range exception, and then you have to extend exception. And then we're going to create a constructor this time. So remember, a constructor helps to set up the object. So we'll just type public and then out of range exception. And then it's going to take a parameter, and it's going to take a string, and then we'll just call it message. And then we'll invoke the super method. So when we use the super method in the first line of our subclass's constructor, it's used to invoke the super class's constructor. So we're going to pass the string parameter message into the super reference here. So we'll just pass message, and that's it. So we created up a new class. We called our exception what we want here. So we just called it out of range exception, and then we have to remember to use the extends keyword, and we have to extend the exception class because all exceptions come from the exception class, which all exceptions come from the throwable class. And then all throwable comes from the object class. So we'll go back to the main method, the main class, and then we'll just import the scanner. And then we'll just create the class, public class main, and then we'll create the command line. So just public static void main string array args, and then we're going to use the throws keyword, and we're going to say that this program throws an out of range exception. So we'll create some variables. So we'll just say final int. We'll just call it min. We'll just call it 20. And we'll say create another final int, and we'll say max, and we'll say equals 50. And we'll create a scanner, scan equals new scanner, and we'll call system.in for the input stream. So now we'll create an object of type out of range exception. So out of range exception, we can just call it e equals new out of range exception. And we'll say that exception is, we're passing the message here, because in the out of range exception constructor, It's taking a string parameter, which is a message, just a string, and we've called it message. So here we have to input a string here for the message of the exception. So we'll just say user value is out of range, and then re-enter. And then we'll just system.out.println, and then we'll just say enter an integer between 20 and 50. And then we'll create another variable up here, and we'll just call it int val. So then we'll say val equals scan.nextInt, so we can scan in the value. So here it's going to look for an int to scan. And then we're going to have a conditional statement here, so we'll say if val is less than min, or val is greater than max, then we'll call the throw statement, and we'll throw our exception. Then system.out.println, and we'll just say end of the program. We'll just say here might not reach. Okay, we'll just save and run it. Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't problem, this is supposed to be E. Throw E, okay, try it again, save and run. So it's asking for an integer between 20 and 50, so we'll just say like 25. So in our main method, it created some variables. It created a scanner object. It created an object of type out of range exception, which takes a string as a parameter in its constructor, and that string is passed down into the super message, which is calling the parent's constructor. So the parent's constructor is in the exception class. So then in the exception class, there's going to be a constructor, and it's going to take a string. So that string that we inputted goes into our object. Then we print enter an integer between 20 and 50. Then our val scanned in what was entered. So our value was 25. So if val is less than 20 or greater than 50, which it's not, so this whole thing is going to get skipped. Since we use braces here, it's just going to skip everything in there and just going to go right here. So system.out.println, end of program. So if we run it again, and if we put something out of 20 and 50, like 9, then an exception occurred. So it says an exception in thread main out of range exception user value is out of range, re-enter. So that's the exception that we created right there. User value is out of range, re-enter. And it says it occurred at main, dot main, and then the line. So basically, we define our exception to get thrown if the value is less than minimum and greater than max. So it only passes this statement. The statement is only false if it's less than minimum or greater than max, which is what we entered now, which was 9. So since it was 9, the statement was true, and we entered the conditional statement, and in the conditional statement it threw our exception E, which is right here. The exception that we created, out of range exception. So we're going to go to this class. It threw our exception that we created. So I hope that helps understanding how to create your own exceptions. Thanks.